The earth is our home, and it's our duty to help take care of it, no matter what field we work in. Today we have some inspiring examples of people showing how it's possible to make a difference. I'm Chris Alems in Lagos, Nigeria, and welcome to Eco Africa. Here's what's coming up. Eco-friendly building, how architects in Ivory Coast are getting experimental. Ancient mariners, how scientists in South Africa are learning from jellyfish. And a roof with a difference, how Faroe Islanders build with nature in mind. Burundi has abundant natural water resources, but still millions don't have access to a clean drinking supply. To make matters worse, a lot of the groundwater is being polluted by chemicals from scrap metal. Collecting this toxic waste and turning it into something useful is a hard process. But we met some people who are not afraid to get their hands dirty.
These men are disassembling car parts, and in doing so, they are contributing to environmental protection in Burundi. Because the small East African country lacks proper waste management, all too often, old cars or car parts end up in the environment. Rust, oil, and a range of toxic substances pose a threat to ecosystem and human health. But this backyard business is part of a change that is happening in Burundi. Once these vehicles are dismantled, we separate the metals such as cast iron and aluminium. But it's important that we don't mix or combine them with other materials like oil. We carefully sort the metals for the factory and set aside the rest. After years of neglect, recycling is gaining traction in Burundi. People are realizing that what is considered waste can actually be a valuable resource. Jordan Kunzimana, who runs a scrap heap, knows that raising awareness is key. My friends, you need to explain to the villagers that this metal waste is very dangerous if not handled properly. There are health hazards that are caused by such waste. We need to collect it to earn money and protect the environment. Burundi lies on Lake Tanganyika in East Africa. Holding 16% of the planet's fresh water, it is the second largest lake by volume in the world. But littering and the lack of recycling facilities threaten the ecological balance and public health around the lake. Dangerous waste that's being dumped close to or directly into rivers is particularly concerning, as it can pollute the drinking water of millions. Professor Remy Marie Nkurunziza detected toxic heavy metals in drinking water samples. When it comes to human health, we need to monitor heavy metals, particularly lead, arsenic, mercury, and cadmium. These heavy metals can cause severe immune deficiencies, infertility, or cancer. Lead is concerning because it is carcinogenic and is found in the lake water. Lake Tanganyika serves as a fresh water source for 95% of people living in Bujumbura and other towns by the lake like Rumonge and Nyanza Lake. So this is a threat that we need to take seriously. It's important that we monitor the increased levels of lead and other heavy metals in Lake Tanganyika. Collecting scrap metal in recycling hubs like this one ensures that valuable metals are being reused. And more importantly, that dangerous substances don't pollute the drinking water for millions of people. But raising awareness is not always as easy as it might seem in theory. This work requires patience. We have to go through villages where scrap metal is scattered and some people are reluctant to part with it. George's team prepared today's delivery for their customer. The collected metal ends up here in this steel plant run by an experienced company based in India. Here, the recycled metal gets sorted once more with the help of heavy machinery and eventually melted down and molded into new products. Each day, the plant recycles 40 tons of metal into steel bars, which can then be processed further. The most popular product are high-quality steel rods. They are commonly used to build reinforced concrete buildings. The rods meet international standards, and they are also deployed on construction sites closer to home, like this one next to Lake Tanganyika. And here in this suburb of Bujumbura, there is further proof that an old car can have more than one life. Some of the plant's material surplus goes to these metal craftsmen who make handcrafted cooking pots and stoves. We get scraps and sheets from the plant and we use them to make our products. That's much better than polluting the lake, of course. And the customers seem satisfied. This woman is happy with the new stove for her business, made entirely of recycled materials. The increase in awareness raising and establishment of small recycling businesses alongside major industrial facilities is a huge improvement and helps reduce pollution in Burundi. Promoting conservation issues in the densely populated and growing country is crucial. The Burundian government and the UN's Environment Programme want to set up more recycling facilities, while the European Union is also helping to set up a network of water quality monitoring stations to keep the world's longest freshwater lake clean and its biodiversity intact.
The waters of the southern Atlantic Ocean are teeming with species of jellyfish. These creatures have been around for hundreds of millions of years, yet there is surprisingly little research into them. Now, scientists in South Africa are trying to find out more about them and the critical role they play. Let's take a deep dive.
Jellyfish are among Earth's oldest inhabitants. Mass occurrences, known as blooms of jellyfish, happen roughly every 10 years. But in some regions, like along the Namibian coast, they seem to occur more frequently. But it's hard to get data. Jellyfish drift with the current, which makes them difficult to accurately record. Such invasions are usually the result of environmental conditions, which lead to a drop in the number of predators.
At the same time, that can be facilitated by an increase in temperature. You increase the temperature, these things will grow faster. You drop the concentrations of oxygen, that will affect fish negatively, but it doesn't affect jellyfish. So jellyfish will thrive in areas that fish have been forced to abandon.
The invasion has not yet hit South Africa. Krish Lewis is a jellyfish expert who is familiar with the species in the waters off Cape Town. So far, 20 species are known here, such as the frilly-mouthed jelly and the poisonous box jellyfish. Researchers are only now beginning to understand the role that these invertebrates play in the marine ecosystem.
They not only serve as an indicator species to show us when an ecosystem is out of whack, but they also play a very important role as a prey species, as well as predators in the ocean. And because jellyfish are predators, they actually lock up a lot of carbon into the ocean. And when those jellyfish die, they actually sink to the bottom of the seafloor. And then the following season, with wind-induced upwelling, that nutrients get reused by the phytoplankton in order to grow and start that cycle back again.
There's a lot more to learn about species diversity too. Verena Russ has spent just over a decade studying jellyfish. Together with other scientists, she wants to build a database of the different types found off the South African coast to determine whether there are any changes in their numbers. But it's a huge task.
We get small bits of tissue, we extract the tissue, we get the DNA out of the tissue, and all that's left is this little solution filled with DNA. What we then do is we sequence the DNA and we look at what species we are seeing based on the DNA, and we are discovering many, many new species. And so this has been very exciting for us.
The more the researchers understand about jellyfish types and their numbers, the better they can determine changes in the population and correlate them with climatic conditions. Jellyfish certainly seem to feel at home here, as the coast of South Africa is one of the most species-rich in the world. Around 10% of all jellyfish species live here, and many can be seen at the Cape Town Aquarium. Each species has its own peculiarities, with some only living in cold water, others in warm. Krish Lewis is responsible for breeding them.
It's a complex and difficult task. Each species has its own parameters. So while they're growing up, some species want to live in warm or cold water for certain periods of time. Their diet shift. We have some jellyfish that eat other jellyfish, so we actually have to produce enough jellyfish in order to feed them. Then also, some jellyfish aren't very long-lived. They live for 6 months or 9 months. So we always need to have this conveyor belt system where we're actually growing new species to replace the ones that are actually expiring on exhibit.
Many people are fascinated by these aquatic dinosaurs, or fear them, because many jellyfish are poisonous, although only a few species are dangerous to humans. Some jellyfish also contain hyaluronic acid and important nutrients like proteins, making them a popular food in Asia. But they're not on the menu in South Africa yet. Instead, scientists here hope to better understand the role of jellyfish within the marine ecosystem and how it's affected by climate change.
Now we head to a far-flung European outpost in the North Atlantic Ocean. Here, traditional construction methods, how valuable they can be in the fight against climate change. Here's today's Doing Your Bit.
It's not your average lawn that Raquel Hexa is mowing. Her house has a traditional turf roof. It's a method of insulation that dates back 1,000 years or more. The village of Gassadalur is close to a cliff edge on one of the Faroe Islands, positioned far out in the North Atlantic. Stables built centuries ago by sailors and warriors called Vikings are still in use.
We always try to make as small an imprint on the environment as possible, and this is probably a good way.
The Faroe Islands lie between Iceland and Norway in one of the most remote corners of Europe. They belong to Denmark. The 18 islands are home to more sheep than people. Due to the harsh climate and thin layer of soil, there are few trees. But there's lots of grass. The strips of turf provide insulation. This restaurant is in Tórshavn, the Faroese capital. The grass roof will blend into the landscape, and that's not all.
It's not only beautiful, it's very good for isolation and also very good for noise reduction. When we have the hail and rain and snowstorms, you can hear nothing at all on the roof of the houses.
Green roofs can absorb around 2 kilograms of CO2 per square meter each year. These living tiles convert carbon dioxide into oxygen, reducing the climate warming emissions. Local architect Heidi Poulsen is delighted that one of her favorite building materials can also play an important role.
Before it just was, a material, on the roof. And now it's a tool against climate change.
The construction sector has a huge carbon footprint, and in Ivory Coast's largest city, Abidjan, architects and urban planners are working on experimental energy-efficient homes and public buildings. As we're about to see, it's also important to find ways of scaling up such solutions fast.
Sustainable construction has a promising and pulsating future in Ivory Coast. We look at innovative approaches in urban planning and building design aimed at making city life greener. An eco-construction project taking shape in Abidjan. The vision of this man. Here in Abidjan, on the outskirts of the city, architect Issa Diabate is redeveloping this 3-hectare area with apartments built with a smaller carbon footprint. That meant planning to incorporate a range of environmental features, such as natural cooling instead of air conditioning.
As it's open here and then open there, you can feel the airflow. So we know it's hot outside, but inside here it's not as hot, and we can feel that there's a difference of 2 to 3 degrees.
Built 4 meters above ground due to the threat of rising sea levels and flooding, the district will feature shared green spaces, irrigated by rainwater harvested on site. Plus, a selection of stores will cut back on traffic. Sustainability is a priority for the architects. This explains the focus on apartments, compared to houses that consume a lot of resources for a small number of residents.
If we continue in this direction, the phenomenon will become more pronounced. So I think it's time to start thinking about the city in a different way, especially now that we know how we could create a well-thought-out city.
The site would have had enough space for around 50 detached houses. Instead, it will soon be home to 36 townhouse apartments and 190 regular flats. Although they do cost an average of 200,000 euros. It's a far cry from the 1980s, when the government built a number of new neighborhoods in Abidjan, with small residential units and stores. But that changed when the construction sector was privatized and urban planning joined the free market. A key element of sustainable building is, of course, the materials. One company has upgraded the traditional brick to create a highly robust mixture of red earth, sand, water, and a little cement.
Before, we had either concrete or had to press soil by hand. Today there's BTCS, a stabilized compressed earth block which is pressed by a hydraulic machine. The difference is in strength. Geoconcrete is not as resistant as BTCS.
The bricks will bake in the sun for 7 days before they can be used for construction. On site, they interlock like self-locking panels. They're then puttied to reduce the gaps, the only time mortar is used. It's a fast technique that also provides better insulation.
Cement sucks in ultraviolet rays and sends them back into the rooms. But the clay and laterite that make up BTCS block the rays, so the heat outside can't get in and it stays cooler inside.
There is still one challenge: training. Most workers have to acquire the requisite expertise on the job, as it's quite new. The general supervisor picked up the technique not during his studies, but on building sites.
When I discovered this material, I honestly didn't believe in it. But when I came to see for myself, to see the methodology, to see the practice they used to assemble this block, which is truly a jewel, it was really extraordinary, seeing that a building could be erected right up to the finish without cement.
Ivorian students can learn all about future-oriented building, not in Abidjan, but on the eastern edge of the country in the small city of Bondoukou. The university there teaches urban planning and eco-construction in a course sponsored by the World Bank. For many students, it's uncharted terrain.
I'm just discovering it now. It was originally just a passion, but I didn't really know what was at stake. Now, as my studies progress, I understand why it's important to be able to build in a sustainable and ecological manner.
Professor Pierre Decky is trying to make them aware of the importance of collaborating with all trades and disciplines in their future projects.
When we talk about sustainable development, there's also the economic aspect. So all the economic players can, should, and must work together. Then there's the environmental aspect, meaning all the decision makers there too need to work together. plus the human and sociological aspects. For the cities of tomorrow, all the disciplines have to try to work not independently on their own, but in a complementary way. In 2022, the World Bank introduced a certification system for sustainable low-carbon building. The EDGE label is awarded to contractors that meet a series of criteria, such as minimizing wall thickness and use of building materials, while maximizing the availability of natural light and efficient insulation, with all features being checked during construction. Those who receive approval can apply for green building investment for funding. From planning to certification and completion, a range of proactive initiatives that are together paving a path forward for sustainable urban planning in Abidjan.
Climate change is speeding up because human activity is releasing gases that heat up the atmosphere and create extreme and unpredictable weather. It can make farming very hard, as the recent flooding in Niger showed. We went there to meet a woman who is still managing to growing great sustainable produce. Her secrets, know-how, adaptability, and sheer hard work.
She has created a little paradise, resting 2 hectares of greenery from the sands of the village of Tondibia, northwest of Niger's capital, Niamey. Her real name is Adoum Rose Kenum, but everyone here calls her Tanti Rose. For the past 15 years, she has been cultivating this piece of land, but in a unique way. I chose to pursue agroecology, simply to protect the environment, because this method allows all the creatures we care for, such as animals, living beings, and people, to live in perfect symbiosis. Still an exceptional approach in Niger. There are almost 15 million hectares farmland, covering just 12% of the Sahel country's surface area, even though 80% of the population depends on their gardens or small farms for food. Tanti Rose's garden is an example of the circular economy. She discards nothing. She feeds plant scraps to her chickens, which in turn help her produce organic fertilizer. 2 compost heaps are turning into soil nutrients on her land with tangible results. She harvests up to 300 kilos of lettuce a year. Every week, her produce is sold at a small market in Niamey. Her customers love the pleasing fragrance of her fruit and herbs. The difference between her mint and the mint of the market there is enormous. When you just bring your hand close to your face, you're overwhelmed by its high quality. But her life's work was under threat by the end of August 2024. The great floods of the Niger River had reached her land and inundated her garden along the river. She was in the process of hiring 2 Burkinabe laborers when the catastrophe struck. When she came to pick me up, she asked me if I knew how to garden. I just told her, just give it a try and we'll see. When we got here, the water was rising and almost half the garden was flooded. But as you can see, the river has now receded a lot, and since then, we've started work. Adoum Rose Kenum hasn't given up. The 50-year-old widow decided to turn a challenge into an opportunity and try something new. I used to grow tomatoes instead of rice. Unfortunately, this year, with the floods and the water rising from the ground, I had to grow rice. So I'm waiting to see how it will turn out. While waiting for the rice to ripen, she pursues her other major project, not only planting food, but also processing it, such as a hibiscus drink called Bissap juice in West Africa. It's still on a small scale, but she's about to realize her dream. This is the factory that's under construction, the juice production plant. It's a small unit, it's not big. She invests everything she earns. Recently, she installed an irrigation system to show that planting and harvesting food is possible even when the rains don't come like they used to due to climate change. Her solution to that challenge is ecological farming. Tanti Rose has become exemplary.
Now I'll give anything to have green fingers like Rose. How about you? Please do get in touch at eco@dw.com. You can also find more inspiring stories by searching for Eco Africa online. For now, it's goodbye from me, Chris Alems, in Lagos, Nigeria. Thanks for watching and see you again soon.